order to re-engage, you have to be able to understand, okay, what are the resources, the knowledge base, what are the things I have at my disposal right now in order to engage, and then being clear on a set of action steps that need to be taken as well too.
What are the steps that you take to do that?
The next time you re-engage a situation, you need to understand, one, where did you go wrong? Two, what needs to happen in order?
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. A lot has transpired, but I think the biggest thing after you've had your moments of ground zero, then you have to get back into re-engaging and refocusing on what things you need to do. Last episode we talked about ownership, right? And that comes back to take complete ownership of the situation. I think a lot of times too, when you do get bottomed out, I think the biggest thing is that it's a gift to reassess, and then you get to take ownership and figure out for yourself who you want to be coming out of that situation. Let's reassess. Let's do a whole systems check. Let's see what's serving you, what's not serving you anymore, and let's see how we can become better from the situation.
Right.
So right now, I'm choosing to become better from the situation overall, and so that comes down to re-engaging and refocusing overall.
Have you had or when was a time where you had a refocus, but then kind of pivot all that? Like sometimes with me, I had to, a lot of the stuff that I started with, I had to pivot and completely refocus. Not even only refocus, it's like maybe just refocus on the end goal and then just completely change everything, all the systems, the process, everything.
It's not just going to be a one-time thing, because as you grow and you get to new levels and new environments and new things, what's going to end up happening is you need to go into a process of relearning. And what serves you on one level is not going to serve you on the next level as well too. And so a time that comes into mind for me would have to be, I would say it was the jump from, a big time jump was from marketing agency world to staffing world, where it's completely different systems. Now there's some things as far as marketing that you can put in play, but your ideal client changes, the system of communication changes, the messaging changes, how you approach everything changes, right? Now you have your knowledge base of, your business acumen, right? But you don't necessarily have all the tools that are going to be transferable to the new thing. But that's also as it pertains to meeting new people or getting to new environments or entering into new relationships. What failed over here is not going to work over here or whatever, right? But, there's many entrepreneurs will say, you take you with you, right? But at the same time, you take you with you or whatever, but you don't have to take your same understanding. You don't have to take your same problems. You don't have to take your same baggage and stuff like that. You get a chance when you enter into a new environment to change that up or whatever, right? Or if you're unable to move on from that environment, right, what you have to do is you have to take a real audit and look at the pieces that you do have, take ownership for those pieces, retool those things, and then approach it with a new mind that, okay, this may not work out, right? But I have to continue to tinker with it to keep going. But the reality is that some of us just need a focal point and the opportunity, but the opportunity comes by us getting up every day and being consistent in the pursuit.
Okay, so with Wonderwall Space,
Yeah.
so that before you transitioned over to Syndicate Legal, so you felt like you reached your goal with Wonderwall Space and the media agency and that you were running, or what was that pivotal point?
Wonderwall Space is, at first, when I first got this building or whatever, it was supposed to be a creative space for my team, my in-house team, right? And so it was the company, We Are Epiphany, okay, Wonderwall Space, the creative environment, right? Things changed. I was like, okay, well, guess what? I can make money out of Wonderwall Space. My team can still utilize the space as well too, whatever. Now there's a different revenue stream with that. So I can rent out this space for baby showers, bridal showers, events, production stuff, all these different things, right? I'm covering the overhead and I'm also making some cash flow as well too.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about it is understanding like the capacity of things, right? So not every business needs to be $1 million business. That's not necessarily the goal. The goal for me with this space was, okay, let me cover overhead plus get a little bit of cash flow as well too. I'm not trying to make Wonderwall Space like $1 million business. That's not what it's going to be. I know what after 9 years of owning this space, whatever, I'm quite familiar of like what this space actually can do, you know? And so I'm not trying to go above that. I'm not trying to get romantic about the whole thing. I know what this space is capable of. But that's based off of capacity as well too, right? I work on the Wonderwall Space rental stuff like about at least like an hour a week, if that, and it cash flows for me, you know, and that's the respect of that. So that was never going to be a distraction to any other business endeavors and things that I would need to do, right? The moment I decided to move on from Epiphany, that was a moment that I decided I was like, okay, I've already myself have reached the capacity of what I believe that this business could do, right? And that was
So you want more.
I wanted more, and I needed a different vehicle to get more or whatever, right? And I had to think to myself after doing an assessment, because I had Epiphany for almost 13 years, whatever, right? Now I had to really think to myself, okay, what have I done? What have I haven't done? Have I worked with the people I wanted to work with? Yes. Have I gone to places that I could go with Epiphany? Absolutely, yes. Whatever. Worked on some great projects that I loved? Yes, right? Now came a time during like the pandemic, like just like everybody else, we were reassessing all these different things. And it's like, hey, what more can I do? And is this the right vehicle for me to do it in? And the answer was no. So let me go ahead and venture into some other things that I had interest in. And that was Syndicate.
When it comes to re-engaging, refocusing, to get like a clearer thought, right? It's what do you go over? Like, what is it that you have to? What are the points that you're trying to hit in order to? Okay, I need to re-engage here. I need to drop this. You recently told me you had to go through a whole revamp of Syndicate in the
Yeah.
back end, right, with the employees and stuff. So when it comes to refocusing for you, what does that look like to re-engage?
In the beginning of the Art of War, there's the story of the general getting orders from the emperor to train his soldiers, right? And so he brings his three concubines as test subjects, would you say, right? And the first time he gives the order to them, they laugh, they giggle, right? And he says, "Okay." He turns to the emperor and he says, "If if the orders were unclear, it is the fault of the general." Okay. He then goes back and gives another order, right? And he gives the same order and they laugh again. And then he says, if the orders were clear, it's not the fault of the general, it's the fault of the soldier, right? So then he cuts off the head of one of the concubines. Yep. And then he gives the order again. And this time the order was executed, right? So you have to figure out what is under your ownership, right? What is under their ownership? So what's their thing and what's your thing, right?
Yeah.
What is their responsibility and what's your responsibility? And then once a responsibility has been given or whatever, it's not about if something gets done, it's about how it gets done. And I think so many times we don't system check or audit check something until it falls apart. If everything is working or whatever, right? Then we're good, right? But we never look at, okay, how can this be better? Where are we wasting energy? Where is the path too long? How can we get the more results or how can we scale these results or whatever and not take on too much overhead or anything or even manage the overhead of those different things. And so that's where the first place where I would look.
And so does it go back to like your original vision that you had is with Syndicate? So you once you re-engage, you're you refocus on the end goal for Syndicate. What does that look like?
So the end goal has always been to become the biggest legal staffing company, right? In that, there's so many variables and paths to get there. I mean, because you're talking about, okay, one, okay, you can bootstrap it, right? And then it's like, okay, you're gonna become the legal, the best, the biggest in this space based off of what? Based off of employee count and based off of actual accounts and clientele that you have, or are you going to go into more of a mergers and acquisitions position where you're then going to start buying up your competition, right? So there's so many different variables to get there, right? But it all depends on, okay, how are you executing to make sure that your foundation is wide enough so that you can withstand all these different changes and stuff. And so those are the things that you have to really look at when you're reassessing like your vision, because you can get there, but if you're stuck on how you get there, then you'll never get there the way that you want. Or sometimes you won't even get there, period.
You were talking about how when you asked Steven, how has he been, what he's been up to, and just he's like he was being very very modest. To me, it was like, oh, you're working with Miles Teller,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like, well, that's a big deal. That's pretty cool. And you said sometimes it doesn't, when you're doing something, it looks kind of normal,
Yeah.
and when you get there, the big picture or your goal at least, it's like it's just another day now. It doesn't feel as big anymore. What were you saying there?
Sometimes when we don't necessarily take in like our successes, and I'm guilty of it. I'm like main guilty person of this whole space of that. When it comes to your accomplishments, the things that you've done, the reason why sometimes you're unable to see it for yourself because there's nothing to compare it to, right? I remember I was talking to one of my exes was talking to me, and she said to me, she was like, "Well, this is a big accomplishment." But she was like, "The reason why you don't see it as an accomplishment because everybody around you, your group, your circle, right, has accomplished that thing. So for you, it's a normal thing. You're supposed to have X, Y, Z. You're supposed to have accomplished this, and this. Like, for instance, if you live if you live in a neighborhood where everybody in the neighborhood has $1 million house and up, right? Are you really? It's like to you, it's like, oh, this is just where I live, right? Until somebody comes and visits you, and it's like, dude, you live in a mansion. It may not even be a mansion. It may be something with 5 bedrooms or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But to them, that's only grown up in an apartment or a place that's only had 2 to 3 bedrooms or whatever in a ungated community or whatever. That's a mansion, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the game of like, okay, how do you see yourself, and then also how people see you too. But sometimes you have to borrow that perspective, because when you do need to re-engage, you need to fall back on what are the facts of my history, right? So for Steven to say, "Oh yeah, I'm just working with this actor. I'm working on this movie and these shows and stuff like that."
No
Guess
big
what?
deal.
There is a struggling student somewhere, or a creative that's trying to get into the industry that you're in to work with the studios that you've worked with, and they're looking to figure out, okay, where's the knowledge in the gap or the things that I haven't experienced yet to get to there, because I've been toiling for years, right? And Steven's young on top of that too. So it's like I've been doing this for years, trying to figure it. I've been trying to get these connections for years. There's guys in their 40s and 50s or whatever where they've only worked on small projects and stuff. And Steven's walking around movie studios and campuses and all kinds of stuff like that, is doing his thing, and they're trying to figure out, how do I get to that gap? How do I close that gap? Whatever. So sometimes you have to be aware when you're sitting in a blessed space.
The goal for Video Cartel has always been to be a production house, right? My focus wasn't on like filmmaking or making movies and stuff. My next my next project is documentaries, right? But with the actual end goal, it's always been like a safe space for creatives. And I always find myself, even with like when I have to refocus and kind of like look back at what I've done, it always goes back to the original goal, because I see what I've done
Yeah.
in the past. I have had to change my route, but I look back and I'm like, oh, I'm doing 3 years ago. I said I was gonna do this with this company, and now I'm doing it. It took me
Yeah.
3 years to start doing it. I told myself I was gonna work one time with a TV network, right? I'm doing it right now. I'm with you. We're working on NBC. Now, I didn't really focus too much on it, but there was an idea. It was a seed that I planted, and I started to work my way there unknowingly
Mm-hmm.
that there was going to be a time where I did, right? So now I'm refocusing, and now I'm making Video Cartel, now learning from
Yep.
NBC and what we're doing there with the Desert Brew
Mm-hmm.
is I'm looking now to be a network.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always been an idea there, like floating around, where I would have different content on the channel and be kind of like its own network. So for me, that's like the refocusing is really looking back at what I have done, what I can do better, and then where I can go next. But the goal stays the same.
As you're kind of going through like the journey between here and then a place called there too, the in between stuff, right? So the stuff that you pick up in between and the things that you continue to carry, right? Like I'm out of the agency space, whatever, but media has always followed me around.
Yeah.
You know, like even like hey, the show with NBC stuff, right? That that was something that just almost fell into my lap,
Hmm.
right? And it was like, okay, this fell into my lap. But when things fall into your lap when you're on your journey or whatever, you have to make sure you take care of them.
Yeah.
Because you can't just say, okay, let me throw this out the window. No, no. You have to look at what the opportunity actually is. When they fall into your lap, you have to take care of them. That means like, okay, pay attention to it. Make sure that it is you're doing it to your best of your ability overall. You know, there's gonna be some days where you just feel like, hey, like, is this a opportunity or is this a distraction? And that comes back to, okay, let me do the audit system check on this, whatever.
Hmm.
What is the opportunity aspect of these things, whatever? And also, are you maximizing that opportunity as well? Because those things in those relationships that you pick up along the way, those are the things that are going to carry you. So, for instance, like, you know, my first even thing being in the desert, right? So I had a studio out in the desert, which was it was more production focused, and you know that studio was it was an amazing, beautiful studio. We had like clientele that would come there and record like Bill Gates and stuff
Hmm.
and other influencers, and that space in particular or whatever, even though it did not last, the reality of that space that it gave an opportunity and exposure to a whole new network that also developed into the show with NBC Palm Springs too.
So now you have that in your pocket, in your back pocket. You
Absolutely.
can say that that's something that it's in your resume, at
Absolutely.
least. When you want to, so you can pretty much at this point do anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes down to what's distracting you or what's pushing you forward,
Mm-hmm.
right? What do you assess? What is it? What are the key things that you look at to say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this no longer serves me. I'm gonna move on to the next.
I think it comes down to how does it make you feel, and then also being brutally honest too. I think you know we all go through seasons where we have to be really honest with ourselves because we can literally talk ourselves into believing that we are the hero of this story or whatever, right? And I talked about this in the last podcast where you may not be the hero of the story. You're actually the villain,
Hmm.
you know, and it comes down to being brutally honest with yourself. And sometimes in life, you will get the chance to be holding the detonator to blow up your own bullshit. Or guess what? Life will just say, "Here's let me hand the detonator to somebody else," and they're gonna blow up your bullshit,
Hmm.
right? And when that happens, you do need to take some time to assess, revisit it, right? And understand, okay, I fucked up, right?
Yeah.
I fucked up, and there's nothing I can do about this situation. This situation is radioactive. It is done. You are done here. Okay, you are done here.
You're cooked.
You're cooked, right? You're done. Now, are you going to give yourself the opportunity for something like that to happen again? If you're smart, hell no,
No.
right?
Mm.
If you're wise, you then pick up your pieces of the good things about yourself, right? And then you choose to evolve and move forward in that. But that comes down to you have to really reassess the situation, and then you can grow from there. But in those moments, it comes down to really giving yourself time before you even enter into a new environment, and then not entertaining opportunities or things or spaces that would overall be more of sedation for you, be more of an escape for you, than being of help for you.
Have you done that? Like prematurely made
Oh,
decisions
hell yeah.
where
Yeah, actually, I have. And when you do that, what ends up happening is you invite people to your bullshit. It's like saying, it's like, it is literally, you invite people to your bullshit because you never got a chance to clean everything up.
when you invite people to your bullshit, what is it like? Do you when you say that?
Yeah.
Does it look like? What does that look like when venturing? So it's moving on into a different venture, or is it killing your time and you're bringing somebody with you? Like when you prematurely moved on from that time and you brought somebody along, what does that look like to you?
Looks like more chaos. That's what it looks like. It looks like more chaos. And when you haven't had time to restructure and put things together, what ends up happening is you continue to compound the mess. And then when something big happens, when you could have fixed the small thing or whatever, then you look back and it's like, this situation is worse than it was before. Right? And you only invited a new feeling, new person, new system, new opportunity, new business, whatever, because this business wasn't working out, and you didn't even put your full capacity into this. You never got to see what this would look like if you fully poured in, right? What ends up happening is you only halfway step into a situation. And so many people have been jumping around from situation to situation, sedating themselves in different areas so many times that they're not even giving new opportunities half of their stuff because they don't even got half. They're giving it like 5% because their shit is spread out through all the other things.
So when it comes to re-engaging on, so you've assessed the situation.
Yep.
Now it's time to re-engage. What are the steps that you take to do that?
In order to re-engage, you have to be able to understand, okay, what are the resources, what are the knowledge base, what are the things I have at my disposal right now in order to re-engage, and then being clear on a set of action steps that need to be taken as well too. Because we can't just say, okay, that didn't work out, let me throw all that I have into this new thing or new space without understanding what actually needs to be done. The next time you re-engage a situation, you need to understand where did you go wrong? Two, what needs to happen in order, right? Because you cannot just show up and say, "Oh, I fixed the problem." Okay, how did you fix the problem? Okay, how did you assess that this actually was the problem? How do you know it wasn't another thing? And how are you going to make sure that you're consistent in this as well too? So for me, my re-engaging, what that's going to look like is, my first step was, okay, take time away. Okay, take time away, really evaluate the situation. Two, create an environment around you that is supportive of the new change, right? That's going to be people around you that are truly there for you and are going to give you the straight talk. And shoot, part of that transition may be like 80% of the time, they may be talking shit, but they're like, you know what, you need to fix this and this and this, whatever, right? And having them uncover those blind spots in you, that's the counsel, right?
Yeah.
And then three, forgiveness. You got to forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made, and understanding that who you were yesterday is not who you are today. And you have to be okay with understanding that the people or systems or failures that you did, fail, they may not forgive you. Torian said that in the last episode,
Yeah.
right? They may not forgive you, or you may not have another opportunity over here or whatever, but you have to forgive yourself, because the reality is, if you let yourself fall to shit over the mistakes that you made and the failures that you brought about, guess what? You're not becoming better. You actually didn't even learn from your mistake. You actually just fell back into more of a sedation aspect, and you're not even taking accountability. Accountability is making sure that you don't repeat the same problem, right?
Yeah.
And becoming better from that
Yeah.
and attacking it. It's about your reaction to the problem, not your fall. Let me just fall back and let me just not engage in this anymore. I'm no good at this, whatever. It's like, no, let's practice. Let's figure out what went wrong. Let's re-engage. Let's create an environment that's going to support that. Let's understand what actually happened, and then it comes down to you forgiving yourself for being a dumbass.
Have you done that in your personal life? So you've done that in your business life, but what about your personal life, like your counsel? How have you assessed or had to reassess or been and kind of re-engage there?
I'm still in the phase of the the ownership, right? In all different levels of it, right?
Yeah.
And then the assessing and then dealing with my counsel or whatever. So I'm hearing it from different angles and different things like that. So I understand fully what happened. Now it comes down to the forgiveness stuff, whatever. For me, the work needs to come before the forgiveness. Don't just forgive yourself and not do the work. So I'm doing the work right now, and then I'll go into the forgiveness, whatever. And then, but I will
So
say
you
that
treat it the same though.
you treat it the same
Okay.
because you're still building with that. You know, you're building yourself.
Yeah.
It's like you build the business, then you build the man. You know, but you have to realize that you have to build the man because the man affects the business. You know, but I've had some very interesting conversations, like amazing conversation. I'll talk about one later on, but I will say that sometimes you do things out of reactions of unhealed and unrealized pain. And so you walk and you create casualties based off of things that you feel you can control and that you feel that you are this person or whatever until life exposes you as something else.
I think I'm going through that. I think that exposure to new environments is kind of what's been driving my want to change, because I hear I've heard this quote. I don't know exactly the quote. I might butcher this, but it's who you need to become in order to make a certain amount of money is a person, or levels, new devils,
Yeah.
right? So the next level to a certain income or a certain you the person you are now, you can't achieve that until you change that, and so you start earning that income because you changed who you were, right? But now the stresses and everything, the devils come in that level, so you have to overcome that to get to the next plateau.
Yeah.
And then the income will translate. So I think what with that, have you ever been in a situation where you just had to become a whole different person?
That's literally my entire like life is a constant series of evolutions and growth. You know, like one of my tattoos is I will become what I know I am. You know, it is the understanding that in different series of your life and different visions that come to you and evolve, that this it's going to require a different temperament, a different view, a different energy, but all of those things are within you, right? Because you may talk different, dress different, move different, stuff like that. But that thing that's in you, whatever, it will always be the driving force. Whatever drives you is the thing that's going to get you to your vision. But you have to figure out what it is that drives you. You have many entrepreneurs talk about they have a chip on their shoulder or whatever. That's their driving force. That's their driving force. But also, here's the other thing. Once you get to that level where you accomplish and you become that person, right? What will you pull on, right? And then you have to become something different. Like you were talking about, like the money aspect, right? Yeah. There is certain amounts of money now that I've made over the years where I think to myself, okay, I remember when this would have been like a hallelujah day, right? This would have been amazing if this check amount had dropped, right? But now it's just like, dang, okay, I need more. Like, this is okay. Okay, this was a good day in business, right? And then it was like, oh, this is phenomenal in business, right? But it's the aspect of what do you need at that next level, right? But also, who do you need to become? What do you need to know? Because there's questions that you don't even know to ask yourself quite yet. And that comes to exposure, right? So the becoming aspect, that is just your next evolution. But understanding what does that look like and is it sustainable for you? Because you literally have to die to who you are today in order to become who you want to be. It has to be a totally different thing to the fact where people are like, Jay, you changed. Like you're different. You have a different. There's something
I
different
evolved.
about you. Yeah, like you're different, right?
Yeah.
And in that becoming phase, you can't. It's like I said before. You cannot expect people to just automatically in your beginning of your journey to just sing your praises, right? Or just say, "Oh my gosh, you've done so much." No, 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 no. Sometimes you have to show up completely finished in that phase before they'll even recognize who you are. The becoming stage has no time limit, and also you won't even know that you arrived until you are like with Steven.
Yeah.
Someone says, "Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing."